Beginners, get traction in your recruiting business before you do anything else. So we're going to talk about traction. We're going to talk about what it is and why it should be your number one goal right now. So this is about focus. Hopefully you're not rolling your eyes and assuming that you've heard stuff like this before. I'm not about to launch into a pep talk on focus and determination. It's not really about that. It's not at all what I mean. Might be a little bit of a pep talk, but here's what I mean by focus. Most people looking to seriously get started in this business actually do not know how to focus. I can't stress that enough. Many people seem to fall into one of two categories. Either number one, they don't realize the importance of focus, or number two, they have no idea what to focus on. Let me tell you what I mean. Being successful in the early stages of a business is often about putting one foot in front of the other on a narrow balance beam. But here's the kicker. You have multiple feet that have to take a turn, and you got to know what order to put those feet in, or you pretty much fall off the edge, and that's kind of where you're at right now. Or maybe a better analogy is this. You have to walk on this like checkerboard. You just got the treasure and you got to run out of the tomb like Indiana Jones, and you're not sure which square to step on. You don't know which square is the right next step. Each time you're about to take a step, all you can do is look at all of the other squares, and when you hit the right combination of squares, you're going to get to the end much faster. Step on the wrong square and you fall into a quicksand of distraction and wasted time, and ultimately, potentially, failure. So my goal here is to tell you exactly which step to step on next, because I've stepped on all the steps and I know which step to step on, so you can always be stepping up. Back in 2014, I made all the mistakes, but I still managed to grow my staffing and recruiting agency to 7 figures in 7 months. And the reason for that is because once you hit a momentum point in your business, things really start to swing into your favor and everything starts to get easier. It got so much easier that I just set up 3 brick and mortar locations. I put managers in place in all of them, and then I went traveling with my family for a year while my business continued to grow. Then I started getting offers of acquisition from much larger agencies. Soon the offers became too good to pass up, and it led to the acquisition of my company. Now, let's consider examples of what I mean when I say that staffing and recruiting entrepreneurs often don't know how to focus. I want to highlight some real world struggles that I've seen from real world staffingpreneurs. Here's one example. I've had a number of folks reach out and claim that they want to create a hybrid organization. That means like staffing or recruiting and X. Staffing and software solutions, recruiting and healthcare services, staffing and retail location, recruiting and a subscription service, staffing and real estate together. These may all be great ideas. They might fit together in perfect harmony and become the building blocks for this huge empire one day. Who knows? But let's be honest, okay? The reason you're getting into staffing and recruiting is because it is a low barrier to entry business. If you can just stick with it, you're almost guaranteed to make money. It's a great first business to get into. But let's be honest, it's hard enough to build one business from scratch, let alone 2 businesses in one right from the get-go. So let's just really set all that aside. Let's focus on one for right now. If you have a hybrid idea, that's great. Keep it in the back of your mind for now. Let's focus on step 1, which should not involve any sort of hybridization. Here's another example of problems people tend to have with focus and following the right steps and getting started. I've had numerous folks come to me and say, I can't launch my business just yet because before getting started, I need to do a whole bunch of other things, such as read certain books and take certain courses, or do research on X, or strike up certain partnerships with various industry organizations, or worry about funding or business grants or loans, etc. This stuff happens all the time. One student said that they needed to do all of the following, and it's a mouthful. I'm just going to read it for you right now. He said, I'm in the process of creating the website, and that's pretty time consuming. I also have to get my affairs in order. Regarding the clinical adverse event regulatory reporting services I would be offering clients, since reporting involves the FDA and other global health authorities, there's a lot of paperwork and hoops to jump through, none of which can be done until I file my license to do business. I'm getting all of that information in order so that I can expedite that process once I do end up filing. Lastly, I need to get my numbers in order, which I'm confident in being able to do, since I work with many vendors as a manager at my company and am privy to their hourly and per unit rates. First of all, let me just say that if you're lost in that paragraph, that definitely makes two of us. I have no idea what most of that meant. All I know is that it is not relevant. These are examples of people who are not even getting to step one. They're like these little entrepreneurial centipedes with hundreds of legs, if you will, and they have all kinds of feet trying to get through a small door over a narrow balance beam, and they're just getting twisted up in knots. And all they have to do is just take one step at a time. And they got to start with step one. And building a website is not step one. Paperwork and hoops, they're not step one. Filing, whatever that is not step one. Figuring out numbers is not step one. It doesn't matter what your niche is. None of this can possibly be step one. Your first actual steps, after you do a little bit of pondering and mulling over, should revolve around traction. Just forget everything else. So what is traction? So here it is in a nutshell. Having traction means that you have reasonable and consistent evidence that a particular category or group of companies is interested in the service you provide or will provide, and they want you to potentially work on their job orders. So in other words, if you had everything in place today, they would be your client based on your value proposition. We're going to get into what that is. Nothing else matters until you have this. That is, until you have buying indicators, or for short, BI. So traction, it's not getting paperwork done. That's the opposite of traction. Paperwork and hoops and numbers at this stage are the equivalent of just climbing into a big sinkhole and burrowing down. You're going in the wrong direction, which is down. And it's going to be hard to pull you out. I've actually had a client of mine watch a similar video to this that I made on Udemy. And he actually said that this was one of the big learning lessons he got from the course that I made, which is that people focus too much on everything other than traction. And I was like, awesome, finally, like this guy gets it. And then you know what happened after that? After he told me that, and I was like, wow, I'm excited to work with this guy. He gets it. Here's what happened. He did absolutely everything he possibly could other than getting traction. I couldn't believe it. We had a good laugh together about all of those other entrepreneurs that somehow lack focus. And then he proceeded to do the exact same thing repeatedly over and over and over. Instead of getting traction, he was worried about getting the right phone number for his business. He was worried about creating 27 different email accounts for every possible contingency in his business. He was worried about the right phone service, and he changed it 3 to 5 times to get it just right. He was worried about updating his home office and converting his garage to an office because he lives in the Bay Area and he heard that Steve Jobs did this. And so it was priority number 1. He was worried about his business cards looking good. Every time I wanted to talk about how we were going to get traction, he wanted to talk about Twilio versus Ring Central. I'm not kidding, literally every time. And I can't tell you how great the temptation is for doing everything other than actually getting traction. It doesn't matter how many times I drive the point home, the temptation is still extremely compelling to many people. And it's not hard to get traction, folks. What's hard, it seems, is actually making a start at getting traction and actually focusing on the right thing. Once you actually start focusing on the right thing, everything starts to get easier. But for some reason, it's just that taking that one small tiny step that so many people just can't get themselves to. Once you actually take that step to the next square on the checkerboard, you've immediately bypassed 97% of people. Literally 97% of people. It's astounding. Keeping all that in mind, we're going to focus on traction. So now what does real traction look like? Well, it almost looks like a job order. And what is a job order? Well, when you have an established client that you're doing business with, they're going to ask you for people in one way or another. Touched on this in other videos. They often call an email saying something like, hey, we're looking for X to start on Y date at Z salary. Here's the job description. Here are the details. Here's what we're looking for. Now, of course, you don't have established clients yet if you're brand new to this business, and presumably, so your traction isn't maybe going to look quite like this if that's the case. But here's what traction takes the form of. We're going to call it pre-delivery sales, or PDS for short. And this means, as it would indicate, sales before you have the ability to actually deliver anything. So in other words, you still have nothing to provide. So pre-delivery sales come from pre-delivery marketing. We'll call that PDM for short. PDM are the actions you take to market your hypothetical service. You have accomplished PDS, which is traction, when you have received buying indicators, which is BI. So, this is pretty simple stuff. Try to follow along. We start with the hypothesis, then we conduct a marketing experiment, which is PDM, to try to get PDS. Let's look at a more concrete example. Now, please keep in mind that it's just an example. What I'm going to tell you here doesn't mean that my advice is only good for healthcare. Doesn't mean it's only good for tech or only good for XYZ. I can tell you confidently that this advice is good for everything. We've launched successful staffing and recruiting agencies in every niche you can think of at this point because we've been doing successful agency launches ever since we sold our first recruiting company. So here's the example. Here's the background. Let's pretend I'm seeing like a lot of job postings on Indeed for maybe nurses and personal support workers. And I'll just bet that with the aging population and baby boomer trends, etc., not to mention like the difficult schedules for these folks, there's maybe a growing need or a consistent need for this type of personnel. And therefore, services requiring like nurses and personal support workers may be struggling to keep up because they don't know how to, find these people on a consistent basis. So that's the background. So what would be the niche hypothesis that I could derive from this? The niche hypothesis could be long-term care homes and other retirement facilities may need a staffing service that specializes in flexible workforce solutions specifically designed to recruit and provide nurses and PSWs. How did I perform this hypothesis? Essentially, I just simply typed in the name of my city and I typed in the word jobs into Indeed and LinkedIn, and I just scanned the job titles that came up. I kind of looked for some consistent patterns and ones that kept repeating over and over again. Not very complicated stuff. All I did was look for consistent jobs, certain categories that looked interesting, chose the ones that I wanted to test. So now we test niche traction. TNT. It's time for some TNT, a little bit of dynamite. Have our background reasoning and justifiers. We've built a solid hypothesis that we can feel good about. Might prove to be a winner. But for the love of goodness, just based on your hypothesis, don't assume that it is going to be good. Okay, all we've done is a quick search. It's not enough to go on and start building a business around. Now's not the time to incorporate your business. Never assume anything. Okay, you never know. The niche that you're thinking of might have been amazing and fruitful for companies back in 2020 or in any corner of the world except yours. Maybe in your region there's a weird bylaw that is going to cause problems for you. Maybe government authority is already the de facto provider of the service you're thinking of. So when something like this happens, something puts a wrench in what you thought was going to be a good idea for a niche that you can service, and I know it does because I've personally done a lot of TNT, you're going to be really, 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 really glad you didn't spend crazy time and money building a website and slogging through red tape. Okay, it's much easier to just wash your hands and start on to your next PDM experiment. That's why we make sure we have traction before doing anything else. Here's another quick note. Do not get discouraged, just get excited and keep doing more. Do more and more experiments until you find the one that works. So how do these marketing experiments work? We said we found job ads for nurses and PSWs. Those are good leads. Let's interact with these companies and find out what we can do for them. So let's pretend the job ad that we're targeting says that the candidates for the role must be like PSWs with 2 years of experience and able to work an afternoon shift, as well as be on call. And it also says that the person needs to have experience with similar companies. So you can go to Google Maps and just determine the competitors of long-term care facility X. And you might find LTC facility Y and Z. So identifying 3 similar companies is a good start for your experiment. But wait, before we start the experiment, we're going to need to know a little bit more about the staffing market in your region, okay? You're going to need to know where to position yourself in that market. So we're going to just take a brief detour, because if you're completely brand new to this business, you have no idea how the pricing in this niche works, the following step is going to be extremely critical and very valuable for getting the information that you need extremely quickly, and it's really easy to do. I call it staffing market information mining or agency shopping. So when you speak to a company in the process of doing marketing or PDM, I like to think of it as like a friendly gunfight. Okay, you're each shooting each other with different sorts of ammunition until both sides sort of call a truce and join in the battle together into a hiring partnership. So I'm just going to unpack that. The things that you say are like ammunition in some ways. So before you can go into the friendly gunfight, you need to arm yourself and gather ammunition. Part of the ammunition comes in the form of market information. So it's good to know what the staffing market in your area is already doing. And this is going to give you ammunition that you can use in PDM. So first, make up your own long-term care company, just like LTC's X, Y, and Z. Yours is LTCK, and you're new in town. You've got an address that blends in among other companies. You're looking for nurses and PSWs. You want to engage some staffing services for this. Great. So now it's time for you to go shopping for staffing services. Okay, so just look up the agencies in your area and decide based on what you can find out which ones are going to be most relevant to you. Call them up, tell them you need PSWs and nurses. You want to find out how their service works. Record these calls. This is free training. It's free market research. You're going to find out prices, protocols, laws, compliance, recruiting process, etc. You're only limited by how good your questions are and how naturally you can deliver them. Essentially, any question you have can get answered here very easily because these agencies are going to bend over backwards to win the sale. And so they're going to answer all your questions. You're going to find out which ones specialize in servicing companies like yours. You're going to have an idea of why they charge the price that they charge. You'll get most of the information you need to start PDM if you ask the right questions. So what are the critical pieces of information that you want to come away with? Price, right? What are they charging for the workers that you want to specialize in? How do they justify that price? What are the costs that they have to cover in terms of like government remittances and workers' compensation and all that stuff? What sort of terms do they require in the service agreement? Buyout fees, payroll burdens. What payroll burdens do they cover? Do they pay statutory holiday pay, etc.? Do they work with other clients like your made-up company? How quickly do they usually deliver on these sorts of personnel? Do they specialize in both temporary and permanent staffing? What is their bread and butter specialty? How do they typically find their people? Now, you might not get a super specific answer to this because it's kind of a trade secret, but you might as well ask just in case you do. Once you've taken the temperature in this way of a few of the agencies around town, you're going to have a much better idea on how to discuss prices, how to answer region-specific questions that you might encounter. And like I said, it's invaluable, free training. All you have to do is make about 3 phone calls and just do some shopping. Back to TNT. Okay, so once you've called around to these agencies, you're now armed with sufficient information, ammunition to start in on some serious TNT. Time to call up nursing homes or long-term care homes X, Y, and Z. Before you get all clammed up and shout, hey, like I'm not a telemarketer here. What the heck is this? I'm not good at sales. Relax, okay? This is very simple stuff. The technique is super direct. It's very effective. And really, the less salesy you are, the more success you're going to have with it. Here's the script, essentially. It's not even really a script. It's just a framework, and it's amazing for dealing with both gatekeepers as well as the decision makers. So, ring, ring. And you get the gatekeeper on the phone and they say, hey, hi, hello, thanks for calling Golden Gate Senior Residence or whatever it's called. You're going to say, good morning, wondering if you can help me, not sure who to speak to. I have 2 personal support workers coming off assignment from long-term care facility Y, and I'm looking to get them into a new assignment. Who would I speak to about this? So wording it like this seems to often breeze by gatekeepers. Okay, notice that you have not introduced yourself. You're just offering very relevant people without getting into who you are. More often than not, they're just going to transfer you to the right person right at this point. If not, they might say, where are you calling from? At this step, the number one thing here is don't give a staffing company type name. You don't want to let them frame you as an agency. Don't let them put you in that box, because you are not just another agency. You're much more than that. You're unique. Your brand is unique. Your service is unique. Your specialty is unique. So when they ask you this, you can say, I'm calling from ABC Care, or whatever you're going to call yourself. Just don't put staffing in that title. And so then the gatekeeper is going to say, okay, hang on, I'm going to connect you. And you're going to say, thanks. Oh, and by the way, who is it that you're connecting me to? And you want to get that name. And the gatekeeper is going to say, Sandra, she's the director of care. You're going to say, okay, got it. Thank you. You're going to listen to a bit of hold music, and then Sandra might pick up. You might get the voicemail. A lot of the time you're going to get Sandra. She's going to say, hello, this is Sandra speaking. You're going to say, hi, Sandra. I was directed to speak to you. The reason for my call is that I have 2 PSWs coming from LTC-Y. They're looking for a new assignment. I figured LTC-X would be a logical spot for them. Are there any needs for PSWs right now? Couldn't be simpler. This little blurb is essentially the only lines that you're going to need to remember. It's like your TNT script. You keep repeating it until you get to the right person who can definitively answer your questions. Now, once you deliver this, you might get some questions back, some friendly fire. This is where your ammunition is going to help you. This is why you're going to be glad that you did your agency shopping step before this. But even if you didn't do that step, you can actually navigate this call without it, believe it or not. So Sandra might say, we are looking, as a matter of fact, are you an agency? You're going to say, not quite, but we do have a roster of talented long-term care support workers. I'm calling from ABC Care. We provide solutions specifically for long-term care facilities. You can use whatever buzzword seems to be in vogue with this crowd. And then you can say this, always flip it back with a question. Are agencies typically helping you fill the roles? What I just said there, use as like unique value proposition. Okay, it's a statement of your niche and the specialized value that your company provides. This is what essentially provides the reasoning for the prospect to choose you over all the other options in the market, in conjunction with the fact that you have medicine right now for a pain that you know that they have. So Sandra might say, I do work with 1 or 2 agencies on occasion. Yes, lately we've been having issues getting reliable on-call personnel for our overnight shift. Bingo. So she works with agencies. They're not giving her what she needs. And she is actually opening the door for you to have a crack at a segment of her business right there. So you can say, I see. Well, one of the support workers I had in mind is accustomed to overnights, and she's looking for something more stable than what they can give her at LTC-Y. Now, just so I can determine if this is going to work out, maybe you wouldn't mind sharing the typical wage you start them at and what your agencies are charging currently. I want to make sure we're competitive. When you word things like this, you're going to find that hiring managers often open up the books for you and start speaking candidly about markups and pricing. They're going to often tell you what they're already paying their other vendors, okay? Because they don't want you to charge more. So once you have this info, you're pretty much golden at this point. Now you can ask Sandra if she has anything stopping her from bringing on another vendor. Is this something that can get approval? If so, we can simply send over an agreement and a statement of our value proposition or our marketing collateral and start getting the agreement process in place. Congratulations. Often with one phone call, you can actually get verified traction and proof of concept. That's essentially what you have right here. So let's consider all the buying indicators here. So what are they? So Sandra admits she relies on agencies already. That's a very good thing. Never, ever, ever get scared off just because they work with agencies. That's always going to make it easier for you in this process. She admits the agencies could do a better job, so suggesting that she's not very attached to her business relationship with them. She's being open about information and is essentially allowing you to collect details. The gatekeeper knew that the hiring was a big enough need to notify the director immediately when something on the topic came in, and she's willing to work within the price range that is in line with the market. If you can get this many BIs and at least 2 different TNT experiments, maybe 3 to be safe, chances are you've got a niche hypothesis that deserves you putting the effort into the next steps because it's been validated to some extent. You have proof of concept. In other words, you have Say it with me. The T word, traction. You have traction. And you did the right thing. You took the right step. You don't have to do TNT using the phone, okay? I gave you some examples of how to do TNT with the phone. You can do it just as easily with email. In fact, it's obviously easier. Check this other video out where I show you exactly how to do it with email. It's called Start Your Recruiting Agency in 1 hour with no website for a $20 investment. Check it out.